So picture this, you have a friend or a family member come over unexpectedly, maybe you are expecting and you're planning it, and then you remember, wait, I don't have another controller so that we can play games co-op on my Switch. This is actually something I saw happen a lot when I was working in different game stores. People who would come in last minute or even with their friend or family member looking for a cheap controller that they could buy to use over the weekend. And most times they would pick literally the cheapest controller they could find, despite having a lot of drawbacks. So today, I went to GameStop and I picked out a controller that was probably the cheapest one I could find for the Switch on their shelves, and it was $20. This is the PDP Faceoff wired Pro controller, and today we're gonna see if it's even worth 20 bucks. So first off, let's talk about what you actually get inside of the box. Now on the back, they do describe it as having a removable faceplate, but it only comes with the one that's still attached to it. So I guess you can buy extra faceplates if you want. I do know they make a range of these controllers with different faceplates, but like this one doesn't come with any extras on it, so I don't really know why you would remove that faceplate exactly. Again, I guess you'd go looking for other ones, but it does come with a 8-foot USB cable, a manual, and then the controller along with the faceplate. So we have our 8-foot USB Type-C cable that is actually a bit longer than you would think. It was quite long for me to actually use this. Like, I didn't have a terrible time with how far I was from the Switch, but I could see if you're sitting very, very far away, like an entire living room or something away, it would probably be a problem. But if you're relatively close to the TV, you'll actually have slack. Like you won't be ripping at the Switch when you move around. So the cable length was good, and it's USB Type-C, so that's good to see. It's not micro USB anymore. Now the controller itself, well, let's take a look around this guy, because there's quite a bit to say about a controller that has almost no functionality outside of just being a controller. Like, for example, there are no motion controls, that's out the window, there is no rumble, and it's wired despite having a plug-in on the top, which this fits in very snug. So like when that's in there, it is pretty difficult to get it to pop back out. I don't think people are gonna just have this like popping out completely. Although I guess if somebody trips on this or walks by, it will still come out, so you won't be ripping, like your Switch will have less of a chance to come off than this guy coming out. So I think that'll probably just be like a little breakaway cable, kind of like what we had with the original Xbox back in the day where it had the breakaway cable. Now, it has all of your standard buttons. They're all decked out just like straight up black. They're not like different colors or anything. They really did go with like the black on green look with the white Yoshi egg in the middle. This controller is officially licensed, which means they can use some trademarks and stuff from Nintendo, and they opted to go with kind of the Yoshi green with the egg on the middle there. And this, I saw this pop up when I was picking up Yoshi's Crafted World, so I figured, well, why not? We'll grab the Yoshi-themed controller. Now, we actually see a couple things here, and some of them are an issue for me that we're going to go over. We have the plus and minus buttons down here, but then we have the home and capture buttons at the top. And if you use a standard Pro controller, you will know those are actually flipped. So we're supposed to have plus and minus at the top, and then we have home and capture at the bottom. That threw me off bad. Like, I was playing and I kept hitting the wrong one because I'm used to the Pro controller. If you're not used to the Pro controller, you might be completely fine with this. Like, you'll just get used to how this is. But that was throwing me off pretty bad. I'm not really sure why they did that. It's very weird to me. Not only that, but they put the home button very close to X. So I also could see people hitting that. I didn't run into that issue, but I could see some people accidentally hitting home when they go to hit X. I don't know why it's so close. Like, they have plenty of real estate here. I know they wanted to have this egg in the middle and show it off and be like, oh, look, Yoshi. It's weird, though, to sacrifice button placement for, like, a logo like this. It didn't even have to be that big. It could be smaller. It could be, like, up here, and then everything kind of crowd around it. It's very weird to me to put everything here, unless they wanted to save on cost, and what this is here is just one large button board, which is very possible as well. We'll get further into that when we actually open this thing up. And then down here we have a little turbo button. It's very simple the way it works. You press it once, and then you press a button, and it will, from then on, just repeatedly mash the button for you. This actually worked very well for getting through the opening of Splatoon 2. So if you open up Splatoon 2, you have to go through all this dialogue and annoying stuff. That turbo button worked great. Press turbo, press A, and I just sat there and it blasted right through it. So that was actually a nice little effect there. It works for all of the different buttons. I mostly just used the face buttons. Did not have the clicks or anything work that I could see. But the turbo button works fine for what it's supposed to do. If there's anything you need to just mash a button for, it does help to save this. The buttons have a lot of travel to them. Something I noticed, they don't sound particularly great. They sound kind of cheap, kind of hollow. The sticks aren't bad. The sticks are actually probably the best thing about this controller, minus one thing. On the center stick right here, they have this pattern, and I feel like they did this to help with grip maybe, but it doesn't. I actually would say it makes the grip worse. So we usually have this dotted design around the outside of it, and then the inside is smooth, for example, because it's rubber, but for some reason, this actually feels worse to use it this way. And I feel like it's just because there's like more space between your thumb and the actual solid rubber underneath of it, and it's really annoying. So PDP, switch that around. Make these dots all around the outside and make the center just flat rubber. I don't know why you went with that design. The D-pad is fine. It's nothing to write home about. It's smaller than most D-pads, which was kind of annoying to use because it's not a very large D-pad at all. And it is mushy. But when I was using it, I didn't feel like I was having an obscene amount of mispresses or anything, and I would just label this as serviceable. Again, we'll look at that a little bit more when we open it up to see. You do have a pivot in the middle, so if I kind of press down and I move around, it does kind of move around all the different points, so it's harder to press all the directions all at once, so good job there. The worst part about this controller, I would say, are probably the bumpers. They are mushy as anything. So the ZR, ZL are extremely mushy. They don't feel great. I do like that they have this curve in the back so that it catches your fingers when you push down, but it feels just non-responsive, mushy. R and L are the same way. It almost feels like, all right, so R and L feels like somebody spilled something into this already and it's new. So these bumpers at the top, shoulder buttons and everything, and the triggers are the worst part of this controller outside of the placement of the home and plus, minus, and then capture being flipped. Now, I know we have to test this and we have to test it well. So I figured we gotta pick a game that needs such precise inputs, one that just strikes fear in the heart of gamers everywhere, one that'll make you have to buy this controller 3 times over. That's right. Oh yeah. All right, look, Yoshi's Crafted World isn't a hard game at all, but it was the new platformer out at the time. It runs at 60 frames per second, so we shouldn't have too much input delay or lag or anything. I figure, hey, it'll give us a good chance to use the D-pad and everything will fit nicely together with the Yoshi theme. And I had no issues playing with this controller. The only thing that was really annoying is the controller is very light and it has no rumble, so it feels weird kind of in your hands when you're using it. And I thought the D-pad was a little small, but outside of that, for 20 bucks, I was able to use it effectively in Yoshi. I also switched over to Darksiders so I could use the analog sticks a bit more. And again, I didn't really have any major issues there either. The back ZR and ZL would catch. They are mushy. I don't really like the feel of them, but they would press and work fine when I had to use them. And Darksiders in general ran well when I was using this controller. So as for playing in games, I really didn't have much issue with it. Again, no motion controls, no rumble. Those can kind of throw you off. Of course, no amiibo support, no wireless functionality. We're ripping everything out basically just to give us the bare minimum, but it at least works. All right, so now let's actually rip this guy apart. The faceplate, like I said on the front, is it's not really held on by much of anything from what I can tell, and they don't give you a special tool really to remove it. You know, sometimes they'll give you like a little plastic spudger or something to move it off. As far as I can tell, they just want you to grip at it with your fingernails and just rip it off. I think the best spot to grab it is probably up by these bumpers up here because there is space between them right there, and that's probably the best way to really get this guy off, as you'll start to make some separation there, and then you can pretty much just rip it completely off. So with it off, you can see there were there's several clips all around here to hold it together. So it kind of just snaps together on all these spots here. I don't see an easy way of taking the faceplate off. I mean, it's designed not to really come off easily, so I guess it's accomplishing what it's supposed to do, which is not just randomly fall off. But it's certainly annoying. Now it looks like we have Phillips head screws all over the place. Our buttons are very far out now, and that's something I just thought about, is for it to go through the faceplate and still give you plenty of travel or plenty of distance off of it, the travel is going to be longer just because the button needs to be longer. So we have plenty of Phillips head screws here to remove, and I think it's gonna come apart. So this should be a pretty easy thing to get apart here. So all the screws out, it actually just lifts kind of out. It's clipped a little bit at the bottom here to stay in, but otherwise that's basically the bottom of it. It's interesting to take it apart this way where the screws are going through the front, and then you gotta take the back off because usually it's the other way around. But that will, of course, lift that off. And we are now to the board itself, and there's not a lot going on in here. Again, they're trying to save as much money as they can to make a $20 controller, essentially. So I get why there's not a lot going on in here, but it does start to really remind me of kind of those Chinese knockoff controllers as we get further in and we start looking at the board itself. And it looks like there's really not much holding it in. Of course, we don't have any bumper or rumble motors in here at all, so those are completely empty, which does make it feel lighter in your hands because there's no weight in like your palms or anything when you're holding it. These screws look like they just come right out. And I think at that point, everything just completely falls out. Actually, whoa, 2 different size screws. That's interesting. And then, okay, yeah, so now our front pops right off. And that is the entirety of our controller. It's a very small board. I do like the black PCB. I think it looks really cool. But it's a very small board here, and it looks like, oh, that's weird. Yeah, so they have 2 different boards here. Technically, these are tactile, which is why they feel a bit different. Yes. So the home button and then the plus button are tactile, and then we have our X, Y, A, B buttons here. A bunch of capacitors, tall capacitors too. You don't usually see those just kind of sticking up on a controller, which is kind of funny. The joysticks kind of remind me of what's in like a 360 controller. Very, very minor dead zone in the middle where it'll wiggle without anything on it or in its neutral position. So these sticks are actually not bad. Like I said, they felt pretty good when I was using them. Without too much issue. Like I said, the board itself looks fine. It's nothing too crazy going on, but the thing that bothers me is that it does look like there was a lot of cost saving going into it. Like I said, tall capacitors, not much in terms of board work anywhere. It's a very small, compact board. So I look at this as definitely a cheaper controller overall. They even have kind of the stacks going out the back here for the bumpers. And those are sitting on a very tall rubber push here. And that's why they feel kind of like smush. They feel like you're smushing it down, if that makes sense. It's not like a tactile feel, nothing like that. Now, I told you guys I'm interested in the D-pad, and the D-pad connects actually through these prongs here. So the D-pad is kind of out on its own, and it actually connects through that plastic. So I'm very interested now to take a look at this D-pad because it looks like it's completely separated from the board. So 4 screws holding that guy in, which is probably why it doesn't have as much give. I feel like the reason they had to do that, and I think about it, is because they have this faceplate, so the D-pad has to go beyond the faceplate, which actually is kind of thick, and then still have plenty of room on the outside for you to press it. So that actually kind of makes sense why they would do that. Let's take this D-pad out. So it is a rubber membrane style on top, as we'd assume, with kind of the shorting connections there, but it's a very low rubber membrane, so it has a nice kind of push to it and click. So that's probably why I wasn't getting a lot of mispresses on it. It has the nice spike in the middle there, so you're not pushing all the directions down easily at once. And again, the D-pad still confuses me with Nintendo because it seems like even third-party accessory creators, ones that are making very cheap systems or cheap accessories, are still getting the D-pad right more than Nintendo is. And that's why it's very confusing to me about that Pro controller that they've released. So maybe whenever they do a Switch revision with a Switch Mini, we'll finally get Nintendo to return back to the good D-pad. I mean, even their NES Classic and their Super Nintendo Classic controllers have better D-pads, and those controllers are like, what, $10 a piece or something is what they sell them for. So D-pad on this is actually good, which is good to say. And that's gonna do it here for the PDP Faceoff Yoshi controller. I think it come in a bunch of different other ones as well, like Mario and stuff. Is this controller worth $20? Well, I would say it depends on what you want. I personally would rather have a wireless one, but I do understand there are situations where you want the cheapest possible controller and you don't mind losing almost everything that the normal Pro controller would have. I personally would spend a little more money to get something better. I mean, there are other options out there, even from like PowerA or even cheaper third-party ones online. But if you walk into a store like a GameStop and you're like, I need the cheapest one, and I need it now, this is probably what you'll find, and it will at least work for you. From like the bare minimum, yes, you can play a game and you can at least enjoy it and not have terrible D-pad responsiveness or the joysticks messing up or any of the buttons there. But again, you'll be missing out on a lot. Would I buy this for $20? Probably not. Again, I would save up, but but I at least understand that there is a market for this. But let me know what you guys think about this controller down below. Hopefully the teardown and everything gave you guys an idea if you would like to buy this as well. I left the link down below to Amazon listing for you so you can get more information on it and everything. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Make sure you like the video if you liked it, dislike if not, and make sure you subscribe so you can keep up to date on all different kinds of controllers we go through. I also got an interesting looking Ouya controller for the Switch as well. So we'll take a look at that as well. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.